following members are present. Councillors John Anderson, Arch Buchanan, Matthew Buchanan, Jerry Convery. Councillor Margaret Cooper is not present. Councillors Joe Fagan, Grant Ferguson and Gladys Ferguson-Miller are present. Councillor Elise Frame is not present. Councillor Jerry Gray is present. Following members are present. Councillors Susan Kerr, Hugh MacDonald, Monique McAdams, Elaine McDougall, Kirsten Robb, Graham Scott, David Watson and Kirsty Williams. Thank you, and I'll now pass you back to the Chair for today's business.
Okay, thanks for that, Stuart. Okay, item 1, declaration of interest. Do we have any? No. No. Okay, thank you. Item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. I'll move as a correct record. Can I ask for a seconder? Okay, John Anderson. Yep. Yep. Just move as a correct record. Yep. Okay. Okay, moving on. Items for noting. Local police annual update. I would like to introduce Inspector Slowly and Sergeant Balling. Oh, that was close. Thanks. Thank you. So I'll hand over to yourselves. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Chair. I'm Inspector Linda Slowey, Area Inspector for the QA subdivision area. First of all, I'd like to offer apologies on behalf of Chief Inspector Gary Ferguson, who can't be at the meeting today due to a family bereavement. So the configuration of the subdivision is Chief Inspector Gary Ferguson, supported by Inspector Karen McCall and myself, Inspector Linda Slowey. We also are supported by our community policing team, which exists of Sergeant Ballingall, and one of the other team is based down in Rutherglen. Also supported by the response policing team and the priority policing team, and supported by local and national specialist officers. Our presentation today is based on the local policing plan, which is a 3-year plan which is agreed and put in place, and is based on the strands of protecting our communities, safeguarding our citizens and enhancing our service. Partnership working remains key to addressing the issues in the community. Local officers continue to liaise with partners in the community and share information to detect and deter crime. The issue of youth disorder is one which is prevalent at the moment and is tackled robustly by our officers, and we work closely with the schools, anti-social investigation teams from South Lanarkshire Council and the social work to enforce and divert to further reduce an impact on such incidents. We have worked in partnership with Scottish Fire and Rescue to tackle the issue of fire raising in the community. Whilst the police identify the offenders, the Scottish Fire and Rescue provide education inputs as to the consequences of setting such fires and attempt to identify any motive behind the offending behaviours, and this has been well received by the participants. The ongoing issues are continually reviewed via our Community Safety Hub meetings. These are weekly meetings with partners in local authority housing, anti-social investigation teams and the Scottish Fire and Rescue, which identify problematic tenants, hotspot locations for joint tasking to decrease antisocial behaviour in the area in order to improve the quality of life for our communities. We have school-based officers in Calderglen High and Duncanrig High School, and these are dedicated officers. They have delivered inputs throughout the term regarding bullying, online safety, the role of police in the community. The relationships with the staff and pupils continue to strengthen, and it's key to engaging with the pupils and diverting from any criminality. Protecting our communities, and in particular youth disorder intervention. Our community officers have continued to engage with various youth groups over the last 12 months. In particular, officers have attended at Universal Connections in East Kilbride and spoke about antisocial behaviour, the dangers involved in gang culture, and how people's actions affect others. These inputs have been well received and delivered mainly to the age group between 12 and 15 years. Working with the South Lanarkshire antisocial investigation teams, the police are now able to refer problem families within the community for a joint partnership approach. Parents are being held accountable for their child's actions, even away from the family home. Joint visits have been arranged where tenancies are at risk if the problematic behaviour continues. We've also ran the It'll Cost You campaign, which saw officers visiting licensed premises to deter proxy purchasing of alcohol by adults for young people. Additionally, joint visits were carried out with trading standards, licensing and community officers identified premises who were selling vapes to underage persons. Violent crime and antisocial behaviour. Community police officers continue to engage with Beacons, who is a local charity for persons with addictions. Inputs have been delivered and aimed at violence against women and sexual crimes. This input was greatly received and is something we aim to continue going forward. Early in the year, due to a rise in incidents involving the travelling community, a task force was set up to de-escalate any antisocial and or violent behaviour. And through our positive community engagement and detection of crimes, the incidents have tailed off and tensions eased. Due to the positive, proactive and prevention work, it has kept the impact on the wider community to a minimum. Safeguarding our citizens. Our dedicated community officers continue to deliver their inputs and awareness events in and around the area. And during the winter months, stalls are set up within East Kilbride Town Centre and Sainsbury's and Straven, providing information and security about personal safety, especially on the darker nights. Officers also attended a freshers event at South Lanarkshire College in East Kilbride, again offering personal safety advice to students and providing an awareness of policing in the area to students who are new to the East Kilbride area. Our interaction with nurseries and schools continues throughout the term, with inputs delivered regards online safety, bike marking events, drug and alcohol awareness and road safety. All interactions and presentations being pitched at age-appropriate levels so the children take the best message away. Inputs have been delivered to secondary schools throughout South Lanarkshire regarding online and social media use, and in particular how individuals can leave themselves vulnerable to exploitation. This has resulted in an increase in reporting of incidents in our area. However, I believe this is due to members having confidence coming forward and reporting their experiences to us. Leaflet drops have been taking place throughout the year regarding highlighted campaigns for bogus workmen, doorstep crime, courier frauds, home safety, and we continue to provide advice via online campaigns and publications. You want me to continue? Yeah. Substance-induced harm. Our local community policing teams, along with our priority policing team, continue to target known drug users and those concerned in the supply of drugs. There have been a number of successful operations in the last 12 months with large quantities of drugs and cash being seized. This has caused significant disruption to organised crime in the local area. Intelligence-led policing is a large part of operations around disruption. A few examples of work to date: a male was stopped last month driving a car in Stewartfield area. He was subject to a search and located within the vehicle was £8,000 in cash. A further search of his residential property under warrant recovered £30,000 in cash, 2 kilograms of cocaine, a kilo of heroin and around 50,000 fake Valium tablets, street value in excess of £100,000. This work has a significant impact on organised crime in the local area and public health. Again, after a vehicle stop in the Maple Grove area in East Kilbride, recovery of 105 bags of cocaine within and a total estimated value of £8,500. A male was arrested and put to court for this offence. Overall criminal cash seized by officers from East Kilbride since January this year has totalled £48,930. Acquisitive crime and preventative measures. The police have received additional funding from the owners of the Kingsgate Retail Park in East Kilbride. The funding was used to provide additional reassurance patrols within the retail park, particularly over the festive period. which caused a significant decrease in the number of crimes reported over the Christmas holidays. The success of this operation has secured funding and a future commitment. We continue to gather evidence in relation to the shoplifting teams who operate and travel in the area and who are active from time to time, and intelligence-led days of actions are run in partnership with the retailers. Road safety. Divisionally, we follow a national programme of road safety events to promote safety and target specific offences. Locally, we utilise trained community officers to tackle local issues such as speeding and congestion outside schools. We are also supported by the divisional road policing officers. We continue to utilise intelligence-led data to target areas of complaint, and we also refer to stats around road crashes to target these areas. We have invested in training, resulting in 100% of our community policing officers being trained in the use of the Unipar speed detection devices to maximise their impact on our road users who do not adhere to safe speed limits. Community officers continue to target the boy racers in the area with enforcement and education as and when required. Our Drink Drive campaign saw the detection of 49 offenders since the turn of the year to date. And in April this year, community officers in partnership with the DVSA, Transport Scotland and Road Policing ran a day of action in the East Kilbride area, specifically targeting the Queensway, Calder Park area, and this resulted in fixed penalty notices being issued to drivers on the day for various vehicle defects and minor road traffic offences. That concludes my short presentation on the work to date within the East Kilbride area, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that. Is the 49 an increase from last year in drink driving?
Not aware of the figures from last year,
Right.
but it's something I can get
It's
and
amazing
bring back to you.
on a Monday morning you see the amount of street signage is damaged and
Yeah.
roundabouts and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
Terrible. Okay, right, questions. Now don't all rush at once, right? One at a time. Any questions? Oh, your light's flashing, John. On you go.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of questions. One is, there's quite a lot of talk on social media in East Kilbride about young girls and maybe young ladies as well being pestered by people saying that they're beautiful and can we get your contact details and things like that. I'm just wondering, are you having a lot of reports of this, or is it just talk on social media? And if you are having a lot of complaints, what action are you taking to try and prevent it? The second thing is, there's a report going about that there's going to be a demonstration on Sunday, I believe, from the Scottish League Defence or whatever they're called. Are the police prepared for any such action to prevent the scenes that we are seeing down in, particularly in England as well as Belfast, happening in East Kilbride? And if this gathering is illegal, will you be able to prevent it actually taking place in the first place? Thanks.
The first point, the female's been followed. There was a male arrested last week in connection with two females reporting into the police as regards being followed and inappropriate comments made. That male was arrested and put to court, a 33-year-old male from the area. So he was arrested and put to court. So we were made aware of those reports. I am aware of other issues being spoke about on social media, but in terms of reporting to the police, those two reports were reported into us over a specific period of time, investigated. That male was traced after some extensive CCTV inquiry and arrested and put to court. So that's where we're at with that. So yeah, very much aware of that. The officers in the area are aware of the issues surrounding that as well. So every officer who's out in response and community are aware of that. So in relation to the second point, we are aware of some social media today in particular and yesterday surrounding a planned protest on Sunday evening, potentially within the East Kilbride area. and at the moment there is a policing plan in place for Sunday, should that happen. There is policing plans being put in place as we speak as regards Scotland's response to what's happening down south. However, what I would say is there is no specific intelligence to suggest that we are at risk of what's going on down south at the minute. But there is a policing plan in place if that does happen on Sunday, if that comes to fruition, and it will be a proportionate response.
Yeah, thanks. A lot of the, if I think a lot of the kind of policing issues or antisocial behaviour issues that have been raised with me over the last year, they are actually reflected in the report. So I just, I wanted to just come back to the issue of fire raising. I've kind of raised this for the fire service, really just to see if there had been in the past few weeks anything out of the ordinary. Obviously, it's concerning when you hear about these incidents, you see these incidents happen, but to an extent we expect, particularly when the summer comes, that you see an upturn in those kind of incidents. I'm just wondering if there was anything out of the ordinary about this summer, or if it was part of what we would typically expect to see, and therefore have a plan to address. The other issue that's come up quite some weeks ago, and I believe action has been taken on it, and you mentioned online harm, was this tendency, I think, by a small group of girls actually attacking and bullying others, attacking others, and amplifying the harm that they're doing by recording it and sharing what they record online and on social media. And some of those videos and images had kind of reached me, and they were really disturbing. I think it is the case that, I'm pretty certain it's the case now, that action has been taken. I'm just wondering if that becomes part of your that kind of online awareness work that you were doing. So what I was taking from your comments earlier is about exploitation. It was about making sure it could be about the signs of abuse, or it could be about protecting your financial details or whatever. I'm just wondering if that kind of bullying and harm is part of your online, the awareness work that you do with schools and young people. And then the final point is just on road safety. I know we've had issues before with the orders that are in place for the A roads in South Lanarkshire that dealt with the previous Chief Inspector about this, but the orders that are in place maybe being out of date, and actually we needing the Scottish Parliament ultimately to make sure those orders are up to date, so that we can properly enforce the speed limits in the Kingsway and the Queensway and the A roads in that part of Lanarkshire. So I'm just wondering if you're aware of any progress on that, or if that is something that we're still having to pursue with Transport Scotland and others.
The first point to do with the fire raising, we identified 2 young persons who were responsible for a number of fire settings in the area in East Kilbride. So could we say that's out of the ordinary, or just typical child behaviour when kids get to a certain age? I'm not sure if we can pinpoint that, but we did do a good bit of work in partnership with the fire service around that and identify 2 particular offenders. And the fire service have done a lot of work with the kids and the families to identify the kind of motives behind it, and we obviously go through the reporting channels for the kids and report that through the criminal justice process that's in place for children. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with the fire raising. So in terms of anything out of the ordinary over and above that, then no. The second point, in terms of the online education at schools, it is focused around the bullying and the impact that posting, these out of school or in school fights, assaults, is highlighted through our inputs to the schools. We are aware of persons within the area who are engaging in that sort of behaviour. We absolutely take robust action around it, and like in the presentation, joint working with housing and social work to tackle that, because our enforcement is only a small part of dealing with that. And just a bit of reassurance to any parent out there who's got any issues and wants to report anything, come forward. We will take robust action, and we will take it seriously and deal with it to its ends and work in partnership with council and social work to try and make them and make their children feel safer. And the last point to do with road traffic, probably something I'd need to come back to you off table, Mr. Fagan. Just I'm not aware of the previous work that was ongoing to do with the orders. It's something I would need to look at and come back to you on.
Okay, Monique.
Hi, thanks very much. That's a really good report. It was very thorough, so thank you. It's obviously raised a few questions. One of the questions I wanted to go back to was one that John Anderson had touched on, because I've had a number of people contact me about this who are, I would like to say, they're basically frightened, I can't actually put it any other way than that, about this proposed march by the Scottish Defence League on Sunday. I think that to make our communities feel safer, we need to know a wee bit more about what the police plan actually is. I had sent some stuff over to Inspector McCall, and I am waiting on a response back. But I just wondered how it was that we were going to deal with this. Like, is there more police going to be drafted in? You know, have the police, you know, contacted, you know, some of our communities that will be vulnerable to this protest? Have we thought how we're going to manage the fact that there's quite a few different areas in East Kilbride, not just only in my own area? I'm thinking about where different Islamic centres are, and like what the actual proposal is going to be, so that people actually feel safe, rather than just saying, yeah, we're going to have a plan. What is that plan, and how is it going to be executed, please?
Thanks, Monique, for your question. To address that, there's been work ongoing all week since the activity started down south, with Police Scotland's response across the board to the issues down south. What I would do, first of all, is provide that reassurance that there is absolutely no information, no intelligence-led information coming into us within Police Scotland in any area, but in particularly East Kilbride, that there is to be any violence. We are aware of the TikTok post yesterday indicating there would be some protest of a peaceful nature in the East Kilbride area. We are linking in with the sites that are prevalent in East Kilbride, the Islamic centres, the mosques, and any other religious sites, to make them aware and give them that reassurance that there is a policing response and a plan being put in place. There are absolutely enough officers to deal with anything that comes our way. We are prepared for that. And other than that, we are providing ongoing reassurance to the appropriate people out there at the minute. And if there's anything else I can address for you, but other than reassure you that there is a policing plan in place, that we have on our radar, that we are providing reassurance. There are ongoing reassurance patrols within the community as we speak and will be ongoing. I don't know if that helps allay anything for you.
Monique.
It was to say thank you, and I think that for anybody watching or anybody that's going to watch it later, then it will make a difference. The other thing I was going to say, but I can see Gladys is up next, so she's probably going to bring it up. Was about certain hotspots that we know in each of our areas where there are potential problems that people have tried to cause problems to people that are Black and minority ethnic. So I'll let Gladys, because I know I can guess what she's going to say. So it's just to make sure that these areas that basically, like, you know about those areas, or you can speak to us as elected members about those areas offline, so that we can make sure that nobody is left unprotected. And thank you.
Gladys.
Just before anybody else makes a contribution, Chair, and I'm listening to what's been said before, and I think we're being a bit unfair to the police here. There's operational issues that are going to be coming up this weekend, and potentially, and I think we shouldn't be questioning them in an open forum like this. Yeah, people maybe want reassurance that there's confidence and have confidence in the police, and communities have confidence that the police are there to police for them. But I don't think we're doing that any justice by questioning the police in an open forum like this, when they've got a job to do, and a very hard job to do. And I would just maybe ask that members be wary of that when they're asking and putting the police in that position, because the reality is we're in a volatile time, and I think we should be giving the police all the support that we can, and not putting them under pressure at a meeting like this to give answers. If there's maybe a forum that we can answer questions privately, that might be the way to do it, but to do it in this public forum, I think is inappropriate. Thanks.
Thanks, Davy. Gladys.
It's funny, it's something that I was going to say myself, because there's a lot of questions and because it's live. However, I would disagree with Councillor Watson that anything's inappropriate. The problem is that I've been inundated today with people that are worried in the community, to the point that they're saying, well, do I make sure I'm not going to be here on Sunday? Stay out of East Kilbride? Where do I go? And we're not getting any information back. Now, I emailed the Chief Exec first thing this morning to say, you know, I've seen, and there's other posts that people have been sending to me in other areas, Paisley, etc., Glasgow, and people are just worried and we don't have the answers. But I was going to say it possibly be a good idea if we could have some forum, could have an email with some information, and information in that content that we can share with the public, just to say, look, it's okay. I feel that we've had a good update today, as far as that I know that the police are involved, and would hope that they're involved with the council's emergency planning team as well. But I would like some information back from the council as well, not only the police. I know that the police have got a lot on their plate. Thanks, Chair.
So thank you, and thanks, sir, for your input. I would again just give that reassurance that it has been looked at a higher level than myself sitting here. There's discussions ongoing at present in relation to Police Scotland's response to what's going on down south. We are acutely aware of the social media posts. ACC Gary Ritchie gave a statement this morning on out via media regarding the use of social media and the traction that can build as members of the public become aware of social media posts. So I'll make reference to that. Again, public safety is our number one concern. And just to give that reassurance that there will be policing plans, there are policing plans in place. We will monitor the situation as the picture unfolds over the week. But again, I would reiterate there is no direct intelligence to suggest there is going to be any violence or active disorder in Glasgow, East Kilbride or any surrounding area at this time. I am happy to receive any emails or any comments off table, and I'll answer as much as I can. We have had a myriad of emails into us and phone calls into us this morning, which I've been happy to answer and try and allay some of the fears. But again, I would encourage anyone who has any particular issue out in the community and anybody that's coming to you as constituents to report that back into us and leave it with us and let us do our job. So I hope that answers.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Right, any more questions or comments? All right, Gladys.
Thanks, Chair. My question is actually to Joe. Is the council going to update the councillors and what the council's doing about this? Thank you.
I don't think we typically use the area committee to put questions to the leader of the council. All I can say is that Councillor Ferguson Miller has contacted the Chief Executive and can expect a response separately.
Right, thanks.
Thanks.
If there's no other comments from members, I'll note that I'll note the presentation and ask for a seconder. Joe. Okay. Right, so can I ask members if they agree to note the presentation in itself? Great, thank you very much. Right. Thanks very much for that. It was quite interesting. And we understand that you can't say too much. I understand that. But it was important to take out a few things there for members to grasp that we know it's getting done anyway. But it is interesting. Right, okay, so we'll allow you to escape now.
Thank you.
Right, we'll move on now to the Community Development Report. And Jen Kerr, the Community Engagement Manager, will speak to the report.
Great, thank you. And apologies in advance if I cough through this. I've been unwell this week, as you can hear. So I'm delighted to come back this year. I came last year to present a report about the development of just community partnerships through the Community Planning Partnership. And at those sort of meetings of area committees last year, I promised to come back every year and just talk a little bit more about the general work of the community engagement team and how this team works to support community empowerment more widely, some of the investments that they've been distributing in communities on behalf of the council, and areas of innovation that we've been working in. So this report constitutes an overview of the range of areas of work of the community engagement team across 23-24. Some of it you'll have received in direct reports around the funds, in particular of the Can Do Fund at the last meeting. But also for East Kilbride, we're in the middle of the neighbourhood planning work, and it's actually very interesting and quite different than some of the other neighbourhood plans we've been working in. So I felt it was worthwhile sort of updating members on what we've been finding there and what we're hoping to do about it. So the background of this team is it's about 5 or 6 years old now. This team came together just before the pandemic to take forward neighbourhood planning work, which is where we work with communities and alongside communities and all community planning partners. So while it's a council service and a council team, we contribute this team as part of the community planning partnership as well as part of the council to exploring issues of inequality in communities. It therefore focuses on our top 20% most deprived communities, and that's the focus of all neighbourhood planning work. Neighbourhood planning is a statutory responsibility. We are one of 5 community planning partners that share that under the Community Empowerment Act to tackle what the Act calls areas of stubborn inequality. And the idea isn't that we can reduce that inequality as much as we can minimize the impacts of it and also help partners work together, like the examples we just saw there where the police said, you know, the response to some of the harm that those young girls were doing was actually not really a policing issue. It's a social issue. Housing and social work need to get involved to help get to the root of that problem. Sometimes it looks at redistributing resources across partners or working just a little bit differently. Neighbourhood planning is one of the areas where we actually do that really well together, and the council takes quite a lead role in coordinating that. So since 2019, this team, alongside partners and communities, has produced 9 neighbourhood plans. Many communities have their own community plans as well that they've done through themselves or with a consultant. So those aren't the ones we work with, although we do support those and bring them into the partnership where they need connections and help with partners and other departments within council. But the ones that we specifically report are usually referred to as Our Place, Our Plans. That's kind of the brand that you might be familiar with. Not all of them choose to use that, though. We have 9 to date, and the last and possibly the final one we'll be producing through community planning is this East Kilbride one. So we started that work earlier this year. We started to bring together a committee of local people. I will say it's one of the areas we're finding difficult to bring local residents into. We are trying to build more participation through the development of the plan itself, and we'll probably come back to you through our networks just to enlist some support to bring more people into the Hamilton South plan. The stakeholder group, which we always start every plan with, involves sort of local partners, but also local community activists. And because we're working in the area of Whitehill in particular, we're finding that difficult. And other partners have told us the same. It's not an area that's been easy to bring community together. As a result, we made a point of going and knocking on doors in that community. And what we learned from doing that was very similar to what we saw in the data, which was a bit different than other areas. Well, that may be an area of what we'd consider high on the SIMD area. Actually, people are in work in that area. It's just low income. It's in work poverty. And that's something that we looked, the first step in neighbourhood planning is we look at the information that all of our service data tells us. And what it's told us is that East Kilbride's fairly well off. If you look at the SIMD, there's lots of high incomes in East Kilbride, and there's also lots of low incomes in East Kilbride. And because the SIMD takes an average, we don't see those low incomes very easily. So what we're starting to see, and when we look at wider data and other services, is high levels of in-work benefit claimants, for example. So universal credits, in-work universal credit, one of the highest in the country, actually. We're starting to see families that maybe don't use other services or wouldn't qualify for other services because of their incomes, accessing non-mean tested things for their children. We've seen an increase in food bank usage for families, more children, and the largest one across South Lanarkshire. Unfortunately, we've seen exponential increases in food bank usage everywhere, but it's been highest for families in East Kilbride. We're also seeing lots of indications of larger families in East Kilbride and less of single parents, actually, which is usually one of the issues we find elsewhere. But we find a lot of these families have three or more children, which makes it 3 times expensive. So we think, based on what we've seen and then speaking to people and finding a lot of people not home. Every time we went out 3 times and knocked all the same doors, left cards, a lot of people not home, they're at work. This is an area where people are working, but they're earning low incomes. And in some instances, they've got mortgages, which are on the increase, possibly some consumer debt, and the last year or two has been extraordinarily difficult for them. These are also households that aren't really used to accessing services or support, maybe wouldn't know where to go, and would probably be fairly stigmatized or feel stigmatized if they did. So with that in mind, we've worked with some of our third sector partners who maybe do work with some of these households to put in an application under the Child Poverty Practice Accelerator Fund. We don't know the outcomes yet, to work with Healthy and Active and Waste Not Want Not, two sort of local charities that know people pretty well in the area, to kind of go in and investigate what this means for people and how people feel about it. We're still in the process of analysing the 782 responses we received to the consultation work from the door knocking, the talking to people in the streets, and the children. Unfortunately, some of the comments come back through the schools, and the direct response with children is demonstrating our houses are colder, we're not eating as much, our parents are feeling the stress. We didn't solicit that type of information. We asked general questions around what's it like to live in East Kilbride, what do you like about the place, what could be better, how's life going for you at the moment, and we have had some real open conversations from some of the school children about how difficult the past year has been. So we will put that into a narrative report for all partners to be able to look at and use, and we will make sure that we keep a highlight on that topic for everyone. I also have a role as a co-chair of the Child Poverty Partnership, and it's something we've been debating and discussing, and that was why that application went in, because we want to be able to understand that thoroughly and do it whatever we can between us all to support this. So we're at the process now, in the process of we've knocked on the doors, we've done the survey, we're just analysing it, working with other partners, trying to make sense of what it's saying. If we need to go back out and investigate a bit further, even if that means we miss some deadlines, we think that's worthwhile in this situation. So while we had intended to report this September, we think we'd like to take the time to thoroughly understand what we're finding. But we can still produce some generic type stuff around civic issues, place issues, those types of things that always come back. They're fairly similar across them. So that's quite an interesting piece of work, and I thought one that was worth just giving you a wee bit of detail about. The others are things that you're fairly aware of anyways, the participatory place-based budgeting work that we do, and the can-do funding. Because East Kilbride didn't have a neighbourhood plan until now, or process until now, it wasn't eligible previously for participatory budgeting. We do have one of our local partners, though, received a can-do application. You may remember last meeting, to take forward an entirely third sector model of participatory budgeting. They received £10,000 to do that. So there will be some PB happening in Hamilton South in the neighbourhood planning area later on this year, once we kind of get together with some of those results and see what it is that people would like that money to be invested in. And once we have some kind of suggestions of the themes of the plan, we'll then suggest as a way of prompting more community involvement to put forward some project ideas for the participatory budgeting program. We are hoping that that kind of instigates some more community participation and interest, and demonstrates a commitment as well from the council that we want to work to improve things in the area. Probably one of the most busiest areas for our team, though, has been the community asset transfer work. There's been a significant amount of asset interest in the area, which I'm sure you're all aware and have been quite involved in. So Ian Mulholland sits within the team, and we just recently appointed a second community asset liaison officer who will be focusing not on this area, on another one. Ian will be staying in this area just because of the nature and the depth of some of the complications, the size of some of the things he's working on here, and we need to continue his knowledge and experience in the area. But you may find David Reid popping up from time to time to help out with pieces of work where needed. He's our other additional officer that will be taking on the asset transfer work. I would say that asset transfers are the largest issue with communities at the moment. It's even when we're out knocking on doors, we would ask questions about what it's like to live here, and this is what they talked about. It probably did coincide with some of the announcements last year, but our team and our communities are all saying this is what they'd like help with, and our team have worked really hard to put resources behind that, whether it's persons and support or financial resources. We've worked with community and enterprise to ensure there's funding available for those with REF funding, and that the Community Fight Back Fund could be put to best use in these communities where they don't have access to other funds. We've reviewed some of the shared prosperity funding to ensure that things like fees and legal fees and stuff could also be put specifically and have allocated a budget towards that for South Lanarkshire from our normal community grant programs. So just to be aware that of the range of inquiries, there's both financial and human support resources going into this issue. We believe it's a big one for communities, but from our team's perspective, we think asset ownership is also a critical milestone and key to community empowerment. In our experience in other areas and here, once a community takes on ownership of an asset, it really, really kickstarts community leadership around their own needs, needing less and less leadership from council support staff. One of our more unique projects that has come about through the Community Wealth Building Commission is the Community Wish List, where we've been working with our procurement team to match up suppliers and communities' needs with wishes. We've had such a range of wishes. We're nearing the 100,000 mark now across South Lanarkshire. We've had everything from defibrillators to supplies to women's aid to small cash grants to fridges to food, you name it, being redistributed into the world where people need it. But mostly it's been really nice to see small businesses, not just the large contractors, wanting to get involved in this. So we've had a lot of people approach us that aren't even council suppliers saying, how can we grant these wishes? We've been fairly successful. About half of them in the first year of its launch have been managed to be granted. And in East Kilbride, that's been worth about almost £16,000. We do produce regular news reports about this in the employee or the council view, so please keep your eye on that for the types of wishes that have been answered for your area. We've also continued our community-based period positive program, where we continue to put access to period supplies in public buildings. We're now working with the health centres, just because we're concerned about the closure of some of the community centres and other public third sector organisations where people can access these out with schools, which is that's the other area where the provision is provided. It's a very busy service and one that we're regularly doing. It meets one of our statutory duties as well. And the community partnerships, well, they tick along still. East Kilbride has started. I think at the last meeting we didn't really have one to report on yet. So we have had a few meetings now. It's very early, and like I said, we're still working at a really localised level to get the stakeholder groups in this East Kilbride South area, but the community partnership will be all of East Kilbride and all of its wards. So as that starts to grow, we're looking forward to working with you guys around that and keeping you informed. And if you'd like a relationship directly with the partnership, we can facilitate that for you as well. The partnerships are run by a local community activist as a chair, so we don't like to sort of make any promises on their behalf or offer anything on their behalf. It's up to that group to decide. And I would note that that the team has been through a recent staff change, as you'll be aware of from the budget review, of a reduction in the team. That review has now been completed. Okay.
Thanks for that, Jen.
Thanks.
Any questions from members to Jen directly? David.
Thanks, Chair. A couple of points. I'll start off at 6.5 about the community asset transfer of Shortfield that fell through because Base withdrew at the last minute after wasting a lot of council time, staff time and trying to push that through with them. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, they choose to withdraw from it. Also, it precluded maybe some other groups having a look at that facility. The report stating that there's another East Kilbride organisation looking for a lease in that, and it's maybe going to the Housing Committee. Can I get an idea, is that a step ahead of the ones that are highlighted above at 6.4, where we're assisting organisations in preparation for an application, and so would the Shortfield one be for decision at the next Housing Committee? And going back to the list at 6.4, and I'm not maybe sure if it's an appropriate place to ask this question, but I'll try anyway. I'm looking at that, and there's a lot of football pitches on that, particularly in Straven, and we've already had some in East Kilbride that have gone over in community asset transfers. Is there a tipping point where we look and say, well, we can't have all our football pitches as community asset transfers, and because where does that leave space for community groups and grassroots football if we've hived off all the football pitches as community asset transfers?
To my knowledge, no, that's not going through to September. It would be, by the time it gets to a committee, it will have, Stewartfield will have gone through quite a lengthy process. It takes about 6 months of assessments. So if it's a different organisation, they will also have to go through that process before they come near a committee. So it would, if it's a different organisation making a new inquiry on the same building, it would start from scratch for that organisation. Was that your question?
The report says that an East Kilbride organisation's expected to be considered by the House and Technical Resources Committee in September.
Okay.
Now, my question is then, is that for decision or is that still work in progress, which the list up above says that we're working with these organisations to prepare a bid? I'm taking that come September, it'll be a firm bid and a decision will be taken that an organisation can take over Stewartfield. And is that am I right reading of that?
Yeah, no, you are right. Yes, sorry, apologies. That will come to September. Again, though, that should be going through a same process. Each organisation needs to be vetted on its own merits. You can't just pick up another organisation's application. So if you don't mind, I'll just go do some further research into that and I'll come back to you with the details of what that organisation is and how that's got there. There's possibly been ongoing negotiations with more than one at the same time, and as one's pulled out, the other one was then able to be put forward, is what I'm thinking has happened, that both have applied. Because each organisation would have to go through its own process for ensuring it met all the criteria for a transfer. It couldn't just pick up someone else's and move on. That would be not appropriate. There are 2 others going to committee as well in September, so it will be quite a busy one for September. We are processing through a lot of the change, and actually I think given how scary community asset transfer can be for a community, it's a big step over a threshold for them. There's been a lot of positivity, even though we don't hear a lot of it, and actually a bit of excitement about getting on with it and getting their hands on their own space and doing things for their community. And I think the list and the size of that list demonstrates that we're doing a good job of supporting them to jump over that leap of faith, really, to take on a lease. And the second question about community and grassroots football pitches, there isn't any strategic line on that, and I think that's where that would need to be considered, really. We're just processing the applications and through the legal statutory transfer process. We probably aren't the part of the organisation that would need to be considering how and we value football access to grass pitches and green space, really, or if that's something that you'd like to discuss more with the trust, I would suggest that's maybe the best place to take that up. But it's a valid question. Most areas find there's not enough space for anyone anywhere when it comes to football pitches. So it may be that we want to be considering in our clauses a commitment for 25% community use or free time use or free space use. That's a decision for council to consider, but I do agree it's a valid question. And it's actually usually been a concern of communities that we do address as part of the application process. Quite often we have people raising concerns around, if this particular club gets to have this building, can we still access it? And we can't. We have in instances written that into the lease agreement.
Okay, David. Yeah. Elaine.
Thank you. Thanks, Jen. That was really interesting. I've got kind of one observation and 2 questions, I guess. The first observation was about your work you're doing in the East Kilbride South area, which might include a bit of my ward in Central South. I'm not sure, Ward 7. But in any case, the observation being that you're finding people that are in work poverty. So obviously low incomes, which is being effectively subsidised by universal credit. I guess they're going to be affected by the 2-child cap, which is in place, unfortunately, and hasn't yet changed. So that's not going to help them any. And obviously affected by the macroeconomic issues that we're aware of that are affecting communities in terms of high energy costs and cost of living in general. So that was really just an observation on that one and that group of people. But it sounds like really good work you're doing in there. The second one is a question, actually. I noticed in your list of prospective CAT transfers, which we all know has been precipitated by the announcement of closures last year. But however, hopefully, you know, good things will come out of it. And I know there's been a lot of support given. I did notice on that list that I'm aware of the Red Deer Bowling Green cat transfer, which I've been involved in. I'm also aware of the one with the Westwood Hall. I've no knowledge whatsoever of the Murray Recreation area, which was kind of surprising to me. I didn't know anything about it. So if you could maybe tell me a bit about that, and John will be interested as well. And then the other point was about the community partnerships that are being set up and how you're identifying people. I know you're talking about local activists. These could be self-selecting people, you know, and I know that there are no community councils now in my area. So how do we make sure that you are getting people, you know, and again, I would be interested in being involved in that as the elected member for the ward. Thank you.
Jan.
Thanks. I can't comment on the Murray Recreation site. I'll get Ian to come back to you on the details of that. It was actually one that I was like, oh, we haven't talked about this one. So it's probably fairly recent inquiry. So I'll have to get Ian to come back to you on that, and I will just send an update to all of the area committee with more details on that. In regards to the community partnership, yeah, the lack of community councils, they're normally made up of community councils and stakeholder group chairs or members so the stakeholder group in the areas of inequality that we work in, and sometimes across a whole partnership locality, like the whole locality of East Kilbride, we have quite a few different OPOP plans, but we will only have the one in East Kilbride. And that is a challenge that the group discuss at the beginning as they set out their terms of reference. They would definitely always have to be part of an organisation or a group. It couldn't just be an individual member. They'd need to be part of a community body. One of the partnerships has had sort of a session of like, they might accept applications and decide who gets to join, but have said you can't really, it has to be a fair, open, transparent process. It's a public process. Most to date have not directly involved elected members. It's very much a community space and a community-led space, but they have asked to have a relationship with area committees. So if you'd like to attend, as members would like to attend those meetings from time to time, they would give a space on the agenda, but they wouldn't want elected members to be members of the board, if that makes sense. They'd like it to be entirely community-led, community space, but it's not precluding or devaluing in any way the role of elected members. In fact, they often debate about it because they ask the same question of like, we know we have elected members, we value them, we want to involve them, what can they do? And to be honest, I think that's a really good, honest, healthy, democratic debate to be having, and one that is kind of, when you start to get into empowerment questions, it's a really valid question. What is the role of elected members, and what is the role of community activism, and how does that come together? Who's elected, who gets to make decisions about things? At the moment, the budgets and things around PB and the grants and things, that's all decided by elected members. What the priorities are, that's all decided by elected members. This group's looking a little bit more around priorities and priorities for them in their communities. So they've got a role to inform you guys in your decision making as much as anything else. So that's how it is to date. But we can have you along to have those debates with the group as well, if you like. But again, it's the rules are theirs to set. But we would set a boundary of fair, open, transparent, not individually selective. And must be part of an organisation that represents one or more people in the community. The idea is it's a representative group as well, so they need to have a mechanism to go back to people. We don't develop community councils in our service, but we can work with others that do if there's an interest to reinvigorate some of that. There's pros and cons to doing that, and in some areas where you've got kind of strong third sector anchor type organisations, that's working really well, and it's very representative. It's fulfilling a similar function, but it's not elected. So again, that's a bit of a democratic debate about community councils or the anchor organisation approach in communities, one that doesn't really have an answer, I'm afraid. I'm not trying to get out of answering that, but we've looked at the various forms. So for community partnership, if you'd like, we can arrange for a session for elected members to come along and meet the members that have joined to date. Like I said, it's just early times, and we think it really needs a little bit more on it. And that issue of there's no community councils has come up from community members as well. So so if that's a great opportunity to come and work together with them and start to work on how your relationship with them will work. We're happy to facilitate that.
Okay, thanks very much for that. We'll need to have an eye break for 10 minutes, please. That's the first hour passed by, and then we'll restart again.
Okay.
Okay, 10 minutes. Binder?
It's not 10 minutes.
Right, folks, back to the agenda again. Kirsten Robb.
I had a wee question about the, did you catch that first bit? Just to thank you for your power of work. I had a question about the local partnership. Appreciate you're only doing one local plan, and best of luck for all that. But I wondered if there's any possible synergy with the consultation on LDP3 that could that the partnership could perhaps take part in, maximise community returns, so we get as many responses from East Kilbride, so that the community are shaping the future local plan as much as possible, to see if there's any wee further developments, and that would give people a bit of a picture as well of where, a wee snapshot of where current EK people are thinking about the future of our communities at a EK scale.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, absolutely. We've had our planners out to most of the partnerships. One thing about the partnerships is because it's sometimes the first time where communities have started to work alongside a lot of public processes. We spend a lot of time just learning from each other about how things work and where they can have influence. And we invested quite a bit of time in our team actually going on training and learning about the value of the LDP and its value to communities, that you can actually advocate for community space designation and things like that. So, and the value of social space, recreational space, green space. We absolutely will get them out to discuss as members of presentations to the group and to ask questions. I don't believe it's an area we have anyone that's interested in doing a place plan yet. And with the town centre redevelopment, there's a lot of work there as well already going on. So we think that will be a good launch point to explain the value of spatial planning, urban planning. And actually, one of the things about community planning is place is kind of our focus, our lens of how we organise stuff, the various partners around, because we all work everywhere. But we recognise that there's a need in some places to do a bit more than there is in other areas, or to reduce what we're doing there and focus on areas that need it a little bit more at different times. So a big part of community planning is about bringing communities alongside with us. We actually have a duty to involve communities in that work, and not do it to communities, but do with. And that requires a bit of a learning process on our part as well. And we found on one of our really successful community partnerships that's been around for the longest, there's no stopping that community and their chair from really coming to meetings, sharing their views, helping us improve, actually. So the way we do that. So yes, place and place planning and spatial planning is integral to all of what we're doing in community planning, and we will be putting that on the agenda once the group gets bigger. But I would say at the moment, our main issue with this group is it's just as a community, it's not as cohesive as across all of the ward, as a locality, I would say, sorry, it's not as cohesive as some of the other areas are that have had bigger issues to rally around in the past, and lots more noticeable deprivation. So I think there's a big community development piece of work here, and I think it's quite different from the communities we normally work in. So again, looking forward to your support and help to improve that and bring that on.
Sounds great. Could I ask just a wee supplementaries to ask that the planning team to bring forward some dates about when they're going to do community engagement on LDB3, not as well as with the partnership, but in the general community as well, to maximise the community participation. I can't remember where they did lay out a timetable. I can't quite remember when that is, but when they're ready, if they could give some details so we can support communities to engage with that process.
Okay, thanks. I'm pretty sure they have their survey open at the moment. They've had it open for a few months. They're happy to come and do surgeries, and we've brought them along to anything anyone's willing to listen to. So if you've got any spaces, or I can ask Tony if they've got any plans for East Kilbride space specifically.
Yeah, I wondered if they were doing workshops or anything like that communities could come to.
Yeah, they do, and they are, especially around place plans as a tool for getting involved. But they have been doing some. I'll get back to you with their timescales. Yeah.
Okay, Monique.
Thanks, Chair. Jennifer, I just wanted to ask a question, and it was with regards to the community transfers. So, to the best of my knowledge, Stewartfield was originally wanted by one particular community group, but it wasn't available. And it now obviously is available. So that community group that, or for want of a better word, the organisation, that they had already been through the process for another area. Therefore, and then obviously Stewartfield became free, so they wanted to go there. What I'm kind of conscious of is, because I've been off, I might have missed some things and not be so up to date if Davy doesn't know. So I was wondering if it's something that, a list can actually be given to all of us, is what's actually happening and what stage things are at. Somebody had mentioned the other day that 90% of the asset transfers were in the system. I don't actually know what that means, like what stage that they're at, and if it means that they will be completed in time or they won't. And I think it would just be good for us to actually know what groups are going forward and what stage that they're at, and basically if there has been any movement in our wards with what we thought was happening, but then things have changed, so that we actually know ourselves. And it means that we're not coming from a place of ignorance, we're coming from a place of knowledge. Thank you.
Thanks, that's a good question. Yes, of course, we can arrange that. I would say that It is a negotiation process, so at the risk of disadvantaging any of the parties, including the community parties, we wouldn't put that kind of detail into a public paper, but there may be a place for a regular briefing. Also, likewise, even between this paper being written last month and this month, there's been a change already, what's happening at the next committee. So we keep our own records, obviously, and things can change from week to week, because we'll invest a bit of time with the group and they'll look at something and realize actually it's just too much for them, and then they'll withdraw or they'll pull out, and we think that's a good decision to make if they've invested the time. So so I can ask for a report to be drawn up. It's probably not something, again, we would share in a public meeting, because we wouldn't want to share any private information or commercial information of the community bodies or the council. But we could, and again, it could change from, we'll put a timestamp on it because it could change the following day. But if it's just for the purposes of being aware of if they're in application or in support process, and even within a support process, that can vary from being at the beginning to being right at the very end. Like with this example, I'm like, that's unusual, because we wouldn't start right at the end with somebody ever. So I can ask for that. I guess I would ask what kind of frequency you'd be interested in seeing that on, because like I said, it can change from week to week, month to month. There's a group that meets sort of every 8 weeks. They could probably provide you with some information off the back of that, the working group.
That would be good.
Okay. Well, I'll propose that to the working group and ask them to respond, if that's okay. The
Thank
Community
you.
Asset Transfer Working Group.
Thanks for that.
Thanks, Chair. This comment first and a question on this, a couple of questions. It's quite sobering, this report here about the child poverty within East Kilbride. There's no mention here of pensioner poverty, and I'm wondering, did you look, or does the organisation look at pensioner poverty along with child poverty, which is quite concerning. The other thing is, what impact is the £215,000 budget cut to your group, your department having? Because I know that some organisations, one in particular I spoke to, where some of the staff who worked there with them, with vulnerable people, had been removed because their jobs had been removed and they were reallocated jobs. So I'm just wondering how much impact this is having on first your own group, your own department, plus what impact do you think it's having on the wider community if these staff members are all being removed? And do you think your department would survive another budget cut? Thanks.
Thank you. We didn't see anything out of the normal range for older persons. However, we're just in discussions nationally and internally around accessing some data that is non-traditional service. It's not service data that would give us a bit more insight into individuals who live in the area and kind of break down that group of older persons a little bit more clearly. It's sort of commercial data that we wouldn't normally have. It's expensive, so lots of councillors are getting together to discuss looking at that. I've used it in other areas, and it's probably one of the few effective ways to really understand the 60-plus population and the way that they are. Basically, it tells you what they buy and what they don't buy, and it can go down to a neighbourhood level. So, we're trying to look at that, but generally, otherwise, there's not a huge, detailed range of data as there is for child poverty. And what we've seen isn't really out of the norm. So I guess no, I haven't looked at it in detail, but there wasn't any red flags that came up to say to us we needed to. So if there's an issue you're aware of and you'd like us to look a bit further, we can do that as part of the process. In terms of vulnerable people, our team don't run projects. So we're not delivering direct vulnerable persons or direct services to vulnerable persons. So I'm not sure if that's maybe another team that's had a redesign or a review. The impact of the review on our team has been mainly to reduce the neighbourhood planning officers. We've had 6 years of developing neighbourhood plans, and actually quite a few of them are run by their local communities with our help to tie people up to where they need to go. And the stronger the community partnerships get, the less we're actually needed. In fact, one of them told us to get out of the way recently. We're like, excellent, great, job done. So we've reduced the team by 2 neighbourhood planning officers, and we've replaced one of them with another community asset transfer post, because for our communities, when we did engagement with them about what do you need from us, that's what they needed from us. And our team felt the same. So our role now is we're developing the last neighbourhood plan is to keep them refreshed, evaluate them, and make sure that the connections are there with other services. So that's a different job, really, and it's not as labour intensive as the one we had before. It puts more of the onus on our other partners to deliver on their commitments in the plans as well, so that they're not completely council focused. Where we have council departments, we're happy to keep that coordination going and put some pressure on if it's needed. But generally, we've done the job of developing the neighbourhood plans that we were required to do, and we now have a different job in this team to kind of deliver them. We won't have as much skill or capacity to do that with. I think that would be the impact. It'll take us longer, will be the impact. We're still quite committed to participatory budgeting and place-based support for that and investing in those communities. So we're looking at models with the third sector and with communities themselves so that they can learn to deliver that for themselves with a fair, open, transparent set of rules. It's public money, it has to be held accountable. So we'd kind of make sure that they did that in line with best value, but actually put that work into a community setting. I guess as people become more empowered, they want to do more things for themselves. So we're hoping that that our role changes just to being kind of guidance and advisors rather than drivers or deliverers of service, which is in line with an empowerment approach.
Okay, John. Right. Joe.
Thanks. I do have there's a number of points I would make, but if I could just come to my question, I was just going to ask Jen to maybe expand on that point at 4.7 and about what we were finding in East Kilbride and how different the profile of poverty and the income pressures that we see in people are in East Kilbride as compared to those areas that we would more traditionally have been working with and have been working with up till this point. She mentioned some of that in her presentation, and I just think it's a very valuable point for East Kilbride councillors to pick up on. And it will be really interesting to see what that work is and how that progresses that's set out in 4.7 of the report. In terms of community partnerships, and I also chair the community planning partnership, I think it's just maybe important, and maybe for people who weren't here in the previous term, to remember that the model that has been rolled out to East Kilbride is the model that has already been rolled out to other localities. So it's the model that we already have in Camglen, for example. And that model, there was a tension in the last term that we were picking up, where this is not an extension of council governance, this is community activity, where the council's at the table, but so are other people. Naturally, good hands-on councillors are stuck in their communities and they want to be amongst community organisations, but if that isn't the place for them to be, what we did in the last term, and if this was pushed by my group and supported by others, is when we reviewed the terms of reference of area committees, we made sure that there was a place for some of that community planning to be reported back, and for the area committees and therefore the local councillors to have some oversight and some input into what was happening. So that is just the genesis of how we've ended up at this point, and obviously we've got to make sure that we have these local partnerships in all of the localities in South Lanarkshire. The other 2 points I wanted to make just in relation to the community asset transfers. Yes, there are a number of community asset transfers that strategically will suit the council in South Lanarkshire Leisure and Culture. They were part of our community fight back after the budget that we had to set because of those twin terrors of rising costs and chronic government underfunding at the hands of the Scottish Government. But the community asset transfers existed before that budget. And I think it's just important to remember that there are sites identified in that paper that did not relate to this year's budget, and under the Community Empowerment Act that was passed by the Scottish Parliament, I think probably 10 years ago now, under that Community Empowerment Act, communities can apply, they can make a participation request, or they can make a request to asset transfer our properties, whether the council likes it or not. We don't necessarily need to agree to it, but they have the power to do that, and in many cases that will be to the benefit of the community, and where we don't believe it's to the benefit to the community, there's a process through which we can say that. So I just wanted to make that point, that community asset transfers are now just part of the reality of life in local government in Scotland. They are not necessarily a product of this year's budget. And where they are a product of this year's budget, they are assisted by the investment that we've put in place to avoid that hard stop and those closures that we could otherwise have been facing had different decisions been made in the previous term. And I suppose related to that is I would just make the point that, and I think that's really to reinforce what Jen was saying about if we take Councillor Watson's point about football pitches, which I think is, it's a valid concern. As a result of that transformation fund we've put in place, we're also looking at, for example, can we put an additional pitch into the White Moss recreation area? So it's not as simple as just saying that here's a facility we expect to lose. Actually, those are facilities that we can see some investment in as well. So I thought hopefully that would help some members with the points that they were considering.
Is there any more questions before we move on? No. Okay. I'll move the report and ask for a second. Sorry.
Asked for a response on one topic there, which was the differences around the poverty in East Kilbride and other areas. And I guess the main difference is usually poverty is in the SIMD where we look at is very obvious. It's, housing policy contributes a lot to SIMD, and if we've got large concentrations of housing or social rented housing, that tends to be where we have the largest concentrations of low-income families or households. And we know a lot about those households because most of them are our tenants. In East Kilbride, that's not the case. There's a lot of private housing, and so we don't have as much information about these people or their families. And again, from one street, you can have really high income, expensive housing. To the next street, we've got middle income housing, but actually now it's low income families living in those middle income housing. So we don't know, to be honest. I think the main thing is that we're looking at the in-work credit. That's given us the indicator that what the SIMD is telling us is not quite accurate. It reads as green for income in most of these areas. What I would say is when we go into Green Hill, White Hill area, we can see the traditional indicators there, no problem. We can see the impacts of that there quite clearly. This is other neighbourhoods that are slightly outside of it, more well-off areas where we normally wouldn't even consider or speak to, but we chose to include them and make it a whole wide south plan simply because we saw that there's a lot of poverty in there. It's just not reflected in the traditional way we look at it. So we don't know yet, and that's why we've put in for the accelerator fund bid, as we'd like to understand that better and also find better ways to identify it elsewhere, because we suspect this isn't the only place that it's happening. But mainly that main piece of data is the in-work universal credit, and just that it's the highest in South Lanarkshire, and it's just a smidge higher than the rest of the country even. So, and again, housing patterns have a lot to do with data and how we interpret it, and the housing there is all private, most of it. So it's a victim of its own success in a way, really, as a planned town. It makes it difficult to see because the other SIMD indicators are like access to green space and access to all the lovely things that are well planned in East Kilbride. So it doesn't show up highly at all in the SIMD, but it's maybe not as reliable that as an indicator is what we've learned here.
Okay, thanks for that. No other questions. I'll move the presentation be noted and ask for a seconder. John. Right, I'll ask members if they agree to note the presentation. Thank you very much. Right, we'll let you escape. That was a troll, wasn't it? We've got our grant applications, there's 10 of them. Everybody's had a good look at them, yeah? Yep. We'll just take them en masse, in block, yep. Okay. Right, proposer and seconder. Oh, Monique, and you come.
I did have a look at them, Archie, and it's not that I'm not agreeing with giving them money. What I did want to point out was when I was looking through the list, and I had read it in conjunction with the other document that we had been sent out, which was a copy of the forms that were like filled in by the different organisations, I kind of felt that it was a question that we needed to ask, which was, do we have more money in the budget than just us, giving out the £300? I know that I've been off for a while, so I apologise for being out of sync, but the money at the area committee always seemed to be money that we had before, that there was always a leftover amount at the end of each year. And what I'm thinking is, whether it's to do with the pensioners or the St Vincent de Paul or whatever, they've applied for small amounts, and some of them have done a fair amount of fundraising themselves. So I don't understand why we would just, everybody's here, have a set £300, when maybe if we gave somebody 485, which is actually the amount they asked for, it's only another £185. If we actually have it, like, in the coffers, why are we not just giving it to them? Can it be something that's looked at to see if we can actually give the people the amount that they want? What I would basically like specify though is, I know that there's one about equipment, and on the application form, they were looking for like £9,000 or something. I'm not basically speaking to that item that I want them to get that amount of money. It's more a case of, for the vulnerable in society, I've asked for just more than what we are giving them. Can we look to just give them what they actually asked for, rather than somebody just deciding, let's just give them £300, because it's not enough.
We have looked at this issue in some detail before, and we've only got a pot of money of so much. I'm quite sure Stuart will explain how he works that out. But if we do that, we'll end up running out of money. If we give it huge amounts of money, we'll end up running out halfway through the year.
Chair, with the greatest of respect, it's not huge amounts of money. It's just like we're talking it's another £100, or it's another £50, or it's another £145. And to be honest with you, I think we should be giving money to the people that really need it. John Anderson mentioned about basically like, poverty with our pensioners. I think that there's groups of people that we do need to actually look after, and if that means that everybody that applies for a grant can't get one, then so be it. Let's make sure that we actually look after the people that need it most. I don't know much about Straven and their shuttlecocks that are what they need, 24 dozen. And basically, like, we're going to give them half the amount of money or whatever that they need. But I'm just thinking about pensioners going on a bus trip, and they need the bus, and they need money to get in somewhere. It's just, I don't know. I would like us to look at it and see whether we can actually help the people that I feel need it most, rather than just help everyone who asks us and give everybody a wee bit. I think we should prioritise.
I mean, the majority of groups are from Straven area. Because I've always had quite a respect for that area, because there's so many groups working up there.
And they're so well organised. So I don't have a problem with giving money to Straven. And if all the groups in Straven, so be it. That's who has applied. What I'm saying is, I want to make sure that the people that are applying, they get the money that they actually need. Yeah. And I think that I think that we need to look. I think that we need to go back and look at it again.
Some groups apply for funding that there's no chance that they're going to get. You mentioned
100%, totally agree.
There. Would you like to come in there in any way?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, obviously, as things stand, we're working towards a set budget, which is part of the bigger budget setting process. The danger we obviously run, depending on how much you grant to particular organisations, is that budget doesn't last the full duration of the year. And obviously, as things currently stand, there's no types of means testing and anything like that in terms of the scheme as it currently operates. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but...
No, I think it's actually very helpful, Stuart, and I think it's something that we actually need to look at. So I think that what we need to actually look at is, who is it that actually needs money that we should be looking to give money to, and who is it that basically wants money, that if we've got plenty, we can give it to them. But I don't think it should just be a simple case of let's just say if it's like this is something that we go right every month, that we've got a set amount of money that we can give out, which means that if there's 2 applications one month, but you know, basically there's like 15 the next month, I think we need to look at it differently. I don't think the system's fair.
I'll bring you in just 1 second, John. Yeah. Do you get any more to add? Or
I don't. I mean, it's a decision for members, but not necessarily a decision for East Kilbride Area Committee. If it's something that's going to be wider reaching for the full community grant scheme.
We need to look at all the area committees. Yeah.
I think that's a good idea. So I propose that that's what we do. If I can get a seconder, please.
Yeah. Can I bring John in then? Joe Fagan. John.
Sorry, I've gone out of order. Sorry, I've activated Councillor Fagan. You want John in first?
Well, he's been in there shouting.
I'm just wondering what the procedure would be. Could a member, say, Monique, propose at a meeting that an individual group who has applied for it gets the full grant and gets a seconder and would vote on it individually? Or would it be that it need to change the whole process altogether? I mean, I don't know what the matter with a member actually saying, I don't know what one, let's see, just to get it, the one with the senior citizens or whatever, that Monique say they should get more than the £300, they should get the £450, whatever, and get a seconder, and then the members here vote for it. Is that possible to do that, Stuart? I mean, or is it a case of we've got a set way of doing it, that when somebody applies for a bus run, for instance, they get £300, or would the whole thing need to be changed?
I'll let you in, Stuart. Just 2 seconds, Joe. And you will answer the question. Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, within the report, it's recommendations. It's ultimately for the area committee to decide what awards are given for each grant. The way we try to work it in the way that the recommendations are based. So for outings or for outings with entrance fees, there is a kind of recommended maximum award. There's also general awards for sporting clubs, etc., for example. As I said, obviously as well, it's about trying to bear in mind that if you start to increase the grant funding for particular organisations at this stage in the year, you run a real risk that the budget doesn't last for the full duration of the year.
I mean, we have discussed this in some detail before, but Joe, in you come.
No, thanks, Chair. I was just going to make that exact point. Actually, earlier in this term, this was discussed, and I think the chairs of all 4 area committees took this away to consider how the recommendations are made. So ultimately, it is for the committee to decide whether the committee accepts the recommendations or not, but the chairs and the officials had a discussion around how they present the recommendations and what the kind of rules of thumbs would be that they work to. And I think on that basis, I'm happy to support the recommendations as they are, and I would be quite content to see them agreed today. There was another point that seemed relevant there, and it's just slipped my mind actually. But on that basis, I'm quite content with the recommendations as they are. So that was the other point I was going to make. We did reduce the amount of money available for grants of this kind because of the budget decisions we've had to take. So I think that does mean we're going to have to exert some discipline when it comes to how we make these awards, because of that point that's just been made about making sure we've got the resources come at the end of the year. So it shouldn't be the case. It might be. We don't know what our budget is going to be till you get towards the end of the year, whether you're going to be over budget or under budget. But because it was seen that the area committees tended to have money left over at the end of the year, we made a decision as a council in this year's budget to amend the budget line to try and prevent that from happening.
Okay, thanks for that. Kirsten.
It's just a quick question to inform this. Were we over or underspent last year in terms of the grant budget? I can't remember. I had a quick check, but couldn't find it. So in March 2024, did we find we were and how much if we were underspent?
Councillor Robb, I'm sorry, I didn't actually deal with East Kilbride Area Committee last year, so it's not a question that I could answer off the top of my head. I can find that out for you, though, and I can get that information to the members.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, we wouldn't overspend. We wouldn't overspend. All we would do would be to exhaust the budget that we've got.
Right, we're giving that a good airing. So, let's see. Monique.
Archie, it was one last thing. It was just to say, with regards to the East Kilbride Seniors Forum, they're getting a different recommended amount than everybody else. So the rest of them are £300, but the East Kilbride Seniors Forum's £350. I wanted to know what made them different to the other groups.
Councillor McAdams, the East Kilbride Seniors Forum, it's for an outing and entrance fees. Where they ask for entrance fees as well, there's a higher award generally made, so it's 300 usually for outings and 350 maximum where it's outing and entrance fees.
Although the bus is 350.
Sorry, the bus for...
The bus there, when they've put in their cost, they put in a bus that's £350 and then their costs. Anyway, there's obviously no appetite in the chamber to actually give people more money, so I'm happy just to basically move on.
Okay, thanks for that. Right. I'll move the report and ask for a seconder. I'll second it. Thank you, John. I'll ask members to agree the report. Agree. Right. Thank you very much for your patience. Tell me.